Garfield is now a movie again. Again. I don't even know what to say about this movie. In fact, I have so little to say about this movie. Look how cool this popcorn bucket I bought is. Look how cool that is. Yeah, see how nice this is? Look at the detail of this. And this movie is, this popcorn bucket is better than the whole movie because the movie is fucking shit. Usually I try to start off with the positives with my reviews. There is none here. Let me just talk about my experience going into this movie. So going into this movie, I had very low expectations. The trailers for this movie were absolutely abysmal. I mean, they're just the most like they're basically like worse than the average kids movie trailer because the average kids movie trailer tries to show off the most pandering stuff in the marketing, and then usually when the movie comes out, so it fares a little bit better. Usually that cringy stuff in the trailer is still in the movie when you go see it, but usually it's not. But this movie, went with that route, and but also it kept hiding the plot of this movie, and then you see the plot of this movie, and you understand why they were hiding it. Because here's the reality: Garfield is a very hard character to make movies about. I don't know why they keep necessarily trying, other than he is a popular IP that people like and would like to see on the big screen, I guess. But like, realistically, why don't you just make a TV show and make a bunch of toys? Not that hard. You don't really need to do a movie because Garfield, like, it's not like any of the movies that they've made have been particular huge hits. And even this one cost like $80 million and it's made like double its money or whatever, but like, it's not like it's going to be like big box office money in terms of animated movies. So I don't know what their thinking is with this movie, but I didn't look good to me. I didn't really want to see it. Chris Pratt was just a terrible choice. I think worse than the Mario thing, because at least Mario in the games is not a very distinct voice in terms of the fact that he only says like a couple lines. So it kind of made sense to change up the voice, but I picked Chris Pratt. No, but Garfield does have a very distinct voice, and it's very weird. So I watched this movie. I went in with very low expectations, but I was hoping like maybe it changed my mind a little bit. From the minute this movie started, this movie is just awful. Because, first of all, the pacing of this movie is awful. It really doesn't. Usually, a movie like this would do a little bit of like world building and show you, hey, this is Garfield, here's Odie, here's John, here's their life. Kind of make you care for that dynamic, and then he goes missing, and John doesn't know where he is. But that's only played off as gags, not like actually John being concerned and looking for his pets, which is what a normal movie would do. So basically, because of the weird pacing of this movie, the Garfield stuff is like literally about less than 20 minutes of the runtime is actual Garfield stuff. The rest of this movie is a weird heist movie with Samuel L. Jackson as Garfield's dad, and it just it's so bad because one, I don't know why they expect me to care about Garfield's dad. Like, I don't know. Like in the trailers, they play that music and that's supposed to make you feel like, oh, poor Garfield's getting abandoned by his dad, but maybe the dad had a good reason. They don't really ever properly explain why he abandoned his child and why any of this stuff happened and like the way this movie went down. Even like the villain and his connection to the villain, I didn't really understand why they're being forced into this heist. Like these characters are like in this situation, but I don't understand the stakes of the situation. Why this character is this way? Why this character is this way? So you're just watching, these characters do things, but there's not really any point to it. Most of the movie is a kids movie, so it's trying to be funny, but the gags are terrible. Where like there's a little bit of slapstick that's okay, but the animation isn't great, so like it doesn't really have great slapstick, and then the other part of it is like a lot of the humor is just really cringy, and it's either stuff that you've seen in 1,000 other animated movies or just movies in general, or it's stuff that's real ill-fitting of a Garfield movie. Like why are there references to Top Gun and Mission Impossible? Like what the fuck? And then there's the other part of it is where like, hey, they got um there's some like jokes in the movie that are way too modern, like that felt like what the fuck, like John talking about using dating apps. And to be fair, they could have made that work within the movie, but they didn't. It was just like a weird line one character randomly said, like, "Hey, you need to get on Tinder, John." It's like okay. Or you have Garfield be like, "Don't call me don't call me Junior. You know, it's either Garfield or G Money." I'm like, why would this character ever say shit like that? And then that's really the problem with this movie. I think the best way to describe it is they either had a Garfield movie that was not originally a Garfield movie that someone just turned into a Garfield movie, or this is just the first draft of the screenplay that they just made a movie, because the way the movie's written, the way it's paced, the way it's acted out, the way everything's put together just feels so rough draft, like first draft. Hey, we threw the script in. Here we go. Make this movie made. Didn't feel like there was any effort really put into this movie, and it almost felt like one, it was disrespectful to the IP because of the stuff that the character says. Like there's tons of things that Garfield would never say and do in this movie, and with his other characters would never say in this movie. It's weird. They show you a bunch of a bunch of like different animal characters. None of them are like other Garfield side characters as well. Like there's no Normal, there's no Angeline or whatever. You know, you don't have any of those characters, so they just throw you all these different ones in here, and then make a bunch of new characters. But why? You know, and so like it didn't even feel like anybody involved with this movie really gave a shit about the IP, but they're just like held a gun to their head, like make this a fucking Garfield movie, and they did, and it was terrible, and I really hated this movie. And the other part of this movie too that's weird, is that like the celebrity voice cast is just awful. Of course, Chris Pratt's awful, but Samuel Jackson is so bad because one, you don't even recognize it's him, and then it's just like the most monotone, boring voice. Like there is clearly no fun that Samuel Jackson is having with that part. And when you make Samuel Jackson boring, you're doing something really weird. They have Snoop Dogg playing a Snoop Cat as a weird like cameo, but they were like really advertising that as like a big deal. But he's like not even in the movie. So fucking weird. I don't understand. Also, with the normal movie like this about an IP like Garfield, usually they try to make a bunch of references to like the cartoons or like the comic books, right? They didn't even do that, which just shows there really was no love for the IP. I'm trying to think of an example of a movie that does that, but there's tons of them out there, where they're like, hey, it's Garfield, here's the IP, and they make little references, to make you feel like they cared about the IP, but they didn't, and this movie fucking sucked, man. Don't go watch this shit. It was horrible. I was in a theater, Dolby Atmos theater, believe it or not, on my birthday, sitting in this theater with 3 other people, actually 2 other people, I believe, and none of them were kids, and none of them laughed. Actually, scratch that. A couple of them laughed like once or twice during the movie, but for the most part, it was dead silent in this theater. And I'm sure there's people who be like, well, kids will enjoy it. Yeah, but there's like good kids movies that you could show them. Like If is playing right now in theaters. That's a great movie. Go show them that. There's Kung Fu Panda 4 might be still playing in theaters. I don't fucking know. Inside Out comes out in a few weeks. Go take them to a fucking good kids movie. Don't force them. Don't take them just to shit like this. Like, teach your kids to have higher standards by you having higher standards. What you're paying for them to go see. Fuck this shit, man.